What if I told you that a group of perfectly ordinary, healthy young men became cruel and abusive in just 6 days? Not because they were secretly evil, but because they were given a little bit of power. This scientific experiment became so extreme, so psychologically dangerous, that it had to be shut down early. And to this day, it forces us to confront a deeply unsettling question. Is evil something we are born with, or is it something our environment creates? This is the story of the Stanford Prison Experiment, a chilling journey into the dark side of human nature. In the summer of 1971, a psychologist at Stanford University named Philip Zimbardo had a question that gnawed at him. He wanted to understand the psychological effects of perceived power. Specifically, he wondered how people would behave if placed in a situation where one group had complete authority over another. Are brutality and abuse in places like prisons a result of the personalities of the guards and prisoners, or is it the prison environment itself that creates that behavior? To find out, he designed one of the most controversial studies in the history of psychology. His team put out an ad in the local newspaper, seeking male volunteers for a study on the psychology of prison life. They offered $15 a day, which was decent money back then. Over 70 young men applied. Each one was carefully screened. They underwent extensive psychological testing to ensure they were mentally stable, healthy, and had no history of violence or criminal activity. The final 24 participants were, by all accounts, completely normal, average college students. They were described as mature, emotionally stable, and intelligent. These were not bad apples. They were the cream of the crop. The plan seemed simple enough. Create a simulated prison environment and observe what happens over 2 weeks. Some participants would be randomly assigned the role of prisoners, while others would be guards. No one, not even Zimbardo himself, could have predicted the terrifying reality that was about to unfold. The participants were gathered, and a coin was tossed. Pure chance. Half of the young men were assigned to be prisoners, and the other half were assigned to be guards. The transformation began almost immediately. The prisoners were unexpectedly arrested at their homes by real local police officers. They were booked, fingerprinted, and blindfolded before being transported to the mock prison, which was constructed in the basement of Stanford's psychology department building. Upon arrival, their personal identities were systematically stripped away. They were made to wear ill-fitting smocks with no underwear and a stocking cap to simulate a shaved head. They were no longer called by their names, but were referred to only by their assigned numbers. A heavy chain was locked around one of their ankles, a constant physical reminder of their imprisonment. It took less than 24 hours for things to go wrong. On the very first day, the guards began to embrace their roles with an unnerving enthusiasm. They started by enforcing minor rules, but this quickly escalated. They would wake the prisoners up in the middle of the night for counts, forcing them to recite their numbers over and over. Verbal humiliation became a common tool of control. They would insult the prisoners, call them names, and belittle them for any perceived infraction. Punishments were handed out for no logical reason, seemingly at the whim of the guards. Push-ups became a favorite form of punishment, with guards sometimes stepping on the prisoners' backs as they struggled. The prisoners, in turn, began to internalize their roles. Initially, they rebelled. On the second day, they barricaded themselves in their cells and refused to follow orders. But the guards responded with force, using a fire extinguisher to break down the door and stripping the prisoners naked. The ringleaders of the rebellion were thrown into a tiny closet that served as solitary confinement. From that point on, the prisoners' resistance crumbled. They became passive, helpless, and disorganized. They started to show signs of extreme emotional distress. Some had fits of crying and rage. Others experienced severe anxiety. This was no longer just a simulation in their minds. Their brains and bodies were reacting as if it were a real, life-threatening situation. The power of the situation was overriding their own sense of identity. By the third day, the line between role-playing and reality had completely blurred. The abuse escalated dramatically. The guards' behavior became more sadistic. They deprived prisoners of sleep, took away their mattresses, and forced them to clean toilets with their bare hands as a form of punishment. They would play psychological games, turning prisoners against each other. Some of the guards seemed to genuinely enjoy the power they wielded, inventing new and creative ways to exert their control. Zimbardo himself noted that about a third of the guards exhibited genuinely sadistic tendencies. Meanwhile, the other guards didn't intervene. They stood by, their silence giving consent to the escalating cruelty. The situation was spiraling out of control. On the fifth day, parents of the participants came to visit. The guards cleaned up the prison, fed the prisoners a good meal, and played music to create a facade of normalcy. The parents saw their sons looking thin and stressed, but were largely convinced by Zimbardo and the guards that everything was fine. However, a fellow psychologist and Zimbardo's future wife, Christina Maslik, visited the experiment on the evening of the 5th day. She was horrified by what she witnessed. She saw the guards leading a line of chained, blindfolded prisoners to the bathroom, shouting orders and insults at them. She confronted Zimbardo, telling him, "What you are doing to these boys is a terrible, terrible thing." Her outside perspective was the wake-up call that was desperately needed. Zimbardo realized that he, too, had been consumed by his role. As the prison superintendent, he had become more concerned with maintaining the security of his prison than with the well-being of the young men he was responsible for. He was no longer an objective researcher. On the morning of the 6th day, the experiment was terminated. It had lasted less than half of its intended 2-week duration. The psychological and emotional toll had become too great. The situation had become dangerous. Science had crossed a critical ethical line. The Stanford Prison Experiment revealed something profoundly unsettling about human nature. It suggested that the environment, the situation we are in, can shape our behavior far more powerfully than we like to admit. 3 key factors were at play: authority, anonymity, and power. The guards were given authority by a respected figure, a professor from Stanford. Their sunglasses gave them anonymity, detaching them from their actions, and the power imbalance was absolute. Together, this toxic cocktail transformed seemingly good people into perpetrators of cruelty. This experiment wasn't about a few bad apples or monsters. It was about systems. It was about context. It showed how easily we can slip into roles that are assigned to us, and how those roles can dictate who we become. It's a chilling reminder of who we might be when we believe no one is watching, or when we believe we have the right to control others. In the years that followed, the Stanford Prison Experiment became a cornerstone of social psychology, but it also sparked intense criticism. Many have questioned its methodology, the ethics involved, and Zimbardo's own influence on the outcome. Some argue that the guards were simply acting the way they thought they were expected to act, a concept known as demand characteristics. Despite the controversy, its impact is undeniable. It led to dramatic changes in the ethical guidelines for psychological research. It has been used to help us understand the dynamics of power in real-world institutions, from corporate offices and military units to actual prisons. The experiment exposed a side of human nature that many of us prefer to ignore. It shows that the capacity for good and evil doesn't just reside in individuals, but also in the situations we create. The final haunting question isn't about those 24 young men in a university basement. It's about all of us. What would you do if you were placed in their position? Would you be the cruel guard, the silent bystander, or the broken prisoner? Think about it. If you found this exploration into the human mind fascinating, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. We have many more stories from science that will challenge everything you think you know about yourself. Thanks for watching.